The evening was like any other weekday evening in our suburban home. I had just put the kids to bed, Sarah with her favorite bedtime story, and James with his cherished teddy bear. Emily and I exchanged tired smiles as we cleaned up the dinner dishes together, a routine we had mastered over the years. As I wiped down the counters, a flash of blue caught my eye from the corner of the room, the color of the packaging that stood out against the white tiles. Curiosity piqued. I reached into the drawer where we kept our assorted bathroom supplies. There, nestled among hair ties and spare toothbrush heads, lay a small box, its edges still sharp from being freshly torn open. I picked it up, turning it over in my hands, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. It was a paternity test kit, the kind advertised in infomercials during late-night television. My pulse quickened, and a knot formed in my stomach as I stared at the unopened contents. Thoughts raced through my mind. Why would Emily have this? Was she hiding something from me? Emily's footsteps approached from behind, and I quickly stuffed the box back into the drawer, my heart pounding in my chest. She leaned against the doorframe, her expression unreadable. "Everything okay?" she asked casually, though her eyes searched mine for any sign of suspicion. I forced a smile, my voice steadier than I felt inside. "Yeah, just looking for a Band-Aid. Couldn't find one," I replied, avoiding her gaze. She nodded slowly, seeming satisfied with my answer, and turned back toward the living room. I stood there, rooted to the spot, my mind swirling with questions and doubts. Why would Emily need a paternity test kit? Had she been unfaithful to me? The image of her smiling face, the mother of our children, collided with the unsettling reality of the box in my hand. A wave of emotions washed over me, anger, confusion, and a deep sadness that threatened to consume me. How could our seemingly perfect life be unraveling like this? I closed the drawer with a shaky hand, the weight of the kit pressing on my mind like a heavy stone. That night, sleep eluded me as I lay beside Emily, watching her breathe softly in the darkness. The silence between us felt heavy with unspoken words, each moment stretching into eternity. The questions burned in my chest, demanding answers that I feared to uncover. Did my wife cheat on me? The uncertainty gnawed at my soul, and I knew deep down that a DNA test would be the only way to find out the truth. Emily and I met in college, drawn together by shared classes and late-night study sessions. She was vibrant, with an infectious laugh that could brighten the darkest of days. I was captivated by her intelligence and kindness, and it wasn't long before we became inseparable. After graduation, we embarked on our journey together. We rented a cozy apartment in the city, where we learned to navigate the complexities of adulthood side by side. Our love deepened as we discovered new passions and faced challenges together. Marriage came naturally to us. Surrounded by friends and family, we exchanged vows on a crisp autumn day, promising to cherish each other in sickness and health, for richer or poorer. Our love felt invincible, and in its warmth, we envisioned a future filled with laughter, children, and countless shared dreams. The birth of Sarah marked the beginning of our parenthood adventure. Emily took to motherhood effortlessly, her nurturing spirit evident in every lullaby sung and scraped knee kissed. I marveled at her ability to balance caring for Sarah with her career aspirations, never missing a beat as she pursued her professional goals. 3 years later, James joined our family, his arrival greeted with equal parts joy and sleepless nights. Emily's patience and unwavering love for our children only deepened my admiration for her. Together, we reveled in the chaos and beauty of raising two young children, navigating parenthood with a shared sense of purpose. Our home became a sanctuary, a place where laughter echoed through the halls and memories were etched into the walls. Even amidst the mundane routines of daily life, Emily's smile continued to light up our world, a reminder of the love that bound us together. Yet as the years passed, subtle shifts began to surface. Late nights at the office became more frequent for Emily, her phone buzzing with messages that she quickly silenced when I entered the room. She assured me it was work-related, but a flicker of doubt lingered in the back of my mind. I tried to dismiss my suspicions, chalking them up to the pressures of juggling career and family. Emily's occasional mood swings and distant demeanor seemed like transient phases, challenges we could overcome together. But as time went on, her absences grew longer, and the warmth in her eyes dimmed ever so slightly. Despite the growing distance between us, I clung to the memories of our early years together, the laughter, the shared dreams, the unwavering love that had once defined us. I wanted to believe that our bond was unbreakable, that our family was immune to the storms brewing on the horizon. Little did I know, the storm was gathering strength, threatening to unravel everything we had built together. The first hint of unease crept into my mind during one of Emily's late nights at the office. It was a Tuesday, and she had mentioned a pressing deadline that required her to stay past midnight. I kissed her goodbye as she rushed out the door, her brief smile tinged with fatigue. As I cleaned up after dinner, my thoughts drifted to Emily. It wasn't the first time she had stayed late, and normally I wouldn't have thought twice about it. But lately, there had been other signs. A missed anniversary dinner hastily rescheduled, whispered phone calls that ended abruptly when I entered the room. I tried to push aside the nagging doubts, burying myself in work and the kids' schedules. Yet, each time Emily's phone buzzed late at night, or she returned home looking more exhausted than usual, my unease grew. One evening, I decided to surprise Emily at her office with dinner. I hoped to catch her off guard, to see for myself the demanding workload that kept her away from home. Parking outside her office building, I peered through the glass doors, expecting to find her immersed in her work. Instead, I saw Emily standing by the reception desk, engaged in a lively conversation with a coworker, a man whose name I vaguely recognized from her stories about the office. They laughed together, their easy camaraderie sending a pang of unease through me. I watched them for a few moments, trying to decipher the nature of their interaction. Was it purely professional, or was there something more beneath the surface? Emily glanced at her watch suddenly, her expression shifting to one of mild surprise. She excused herself from the conversation and hurried toward the elevators, her laughter fading into the distance. I stood there, rooted to the spot, my mind racing with questions. Was I overreacting, reading too much into a harmless conversation? Or was there a deeper connection between Emily and her coworker that she hadn't told me about? That night, after the kids were asleep, I broached the subject tentatively. "Is everything okay at work?" I asked, trying to keep my tone casual. Emily looked up from her laptop, her brow furrowing slightly. "Yeah, it's just been hectic lately," she replied, her voice tinged with exhaustion. "You know how it is with deadlines." I nodded, forcing a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "Of course, I miss you," I admitted softly, hoping she would reassure us. Emily's expression softened, and she reached out to squeeze my hand. "I know, and I'm sorry. It's just a rough patch at work. Things will get better soon, I promise." Her words were meant to comfort, but a seed of doubt had already taken root in my heart. As I lay awake that night, listening to the quiet hum of the house around me, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted between us, a subtle change that threatened to unravel the foundation of our marriage. Days turned into weeks, and my suspicions continued to simmer beneath the surface. Emily's late nights at the office persisted, punctuated by occasional text messages that she quickly dismissed as unimportant. Each time I tried to broach the subject, she evaded my questions with practiced ease, citing work stress and demanding deadlines. One evening, after putting the kids to bed, I found myself standing in our dimly lit kitchen, staring at Emily as she scrolled through her phone at the dining table. The silence between us felt heavy with unspoken words, the tension palpable. "Emily," I began hesitantly, my voice breaking the silence. She glanced up, her eyes tired but attentive. "Yeah?" she replied, her tone guarded. "I've been feeling distant from you lately," I admitted, choosing my words carefully. "Your late nights at work, the missed dinners, it feels like we're drifting apart." Emily sighed softly, setting her phone down. "I know," she said softly, her gaze meeting mine. "I've been so wrapped up in work, trying to balance everything. I didn't realize how much it was affecting us." Her words should have reassured me, but the lingering doubts refused to fade. "Is there something else going on, Emily?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Are you seeing someone else?" The question hung in the air between us, heavy with unspoken implications. Emily's eyes widened slightly, surprise flickering across her features before she quickly masked it with a forced smile. "What? No, of course not," she replied quickly, her voice tinged with indignation. "How could you even think that?" I swallowed hard, the lump in my throat betraying the doubt that gnawed at my insides. I don't know," I admitted, my voice barely audible. Things have been different between us, and I'm scared, Emily. Her expression softened, and she reached across the table to take my hand in hers. I'm scared too, she confessed quietly. Scared of losing what we have, of losing you. I wanted to believe her, to believe that our love was still strong enough to weather this storm. But the unease in my heart persisted, a silent reminder of the questions left unanswered. We'll figure this out, Emily promised, her voice filled with determination. I'll make more time for us, I promise. I nodded slowly, a flicker of hope mingling with the lingering doubt. I want to believe you, Emily, I said softly. I want us to find our way back to each other. Her smile was bittersweet, a fragile echo of the laughter that once filled our home. We will, she assured me, squeezing my hand gently. I love you more than anything. As we sat there in the quiet of our home, the weight of unspoken fears and unanswered questions hung heavy in the air. For now, I pushed aside my doubts, choosing to believe in the strength of our love. But deep down, I knew that until we confronted the truth, the rift between us would only continue to grow. Weeks passed since our tense conversation in the kitchen. Emily made an effort to be more present at home, attending family dinners and spending quality time with Sarah and James. Her laughter echoed through the halls once more, and for a brief moment, I dared to believe that we were on the path to healing. Yet, beneath the surface, the doubts persisted like a shadow that refused to be dispelled. Emily's phone remained a source of unease for me. Her guarded glances and hurried conversations only deepened my apprehension. I tried to bury my suspicions, clinging to the hope that our love would prevail. One evening, after putting the kids to bed, I found Emily sitting alone on the porch, staring out into the darkness. The distant glow of streetlights cast soft shadows across her face, highlighting the lines of worry etched around her eyes. I sat down beside her, the silence between us heavy with unspoken words. Emily, I began softly, breaking the quiet stillness. She turned to me, her expression unreadable. Yeah? She replied, her voice barely above a whisper. I can't shake this feeling, I admitted, my voice trembling slightly. That there's something you're not telling me. Emily's eyes flickered with uncertainty, and for a moment the mask of composure slipped. She hesitated, her fingers twisting nervously in her lap. There's something I need to say. My heart clenched with a mix of dread and anticipation. I held my breath, waiting for her to continue. I've been feeling trapped, Emily confessed softly, her voice tinged with guilt. In our marriage, in our life, it's suffocating sometimes. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut, the air in my lungs evaporating into a vacuum of disbelief. Trapped? I repeated numbly, my mind struggling to comprehend her confession. Emily nodded slowly, tears glistening in her eyes. I never meant for it to happen, she continued, her voice trembling. But I met someone. The world around me seemed to tilt on its axis as her words sunk in. 1,000 questions raced through my mind. Who was he? How long had this been going on? But more than anything, the one question I feared most remained unspoken. I'm so sorry, Emily whispered, her voice breaking. I never wanted to hurt you. Her apology hung in the air between us, heavy with the weight of betrayal. The reality of her confession threatened to drown me in a sea of disbelief and heartache. The woman I loved, the mother of our children, had crossed a line that I never imagined she would. I don't understand, I managed to choke out, my voice raw with emotion. How could you do this, Emily? How could you betray us like this? Emily's shoulders slumped, her gaze fixed on the ground. I don't know, she replied softly, tears streaming down her cheeks. I was lost, confused. I didn't know how to fix things between us. Anger, pain, and a profound sense of loss warred within me as I struggled to process her words. The shattered pieces of our once perfect life lay scattered around us, the cracks irreparable. I thought we could work through anything, I said hoarsely, my voice cracking with emotion. I trusted you, Emily. Her eyes met mine, filled with regret and unspoken apology. I know, she whispered brokenly, and I'll do whatever it takes to make things right again. Please, believe me. But belief felt like a distant memory, a luxury I could no longer afford. As I sat there beside her, the chill of betrayal seeped into my bones, and the realization dawned upon me that the road ahead would be fraught with uncertainty, forgiveness, and the painful truths that could no longer be ignored. Days turned into a blur of numbness and disbelief after Emily's confession. The weight of her words hung heavy between us, casting a shadow over every interaction. I tried to maintain a sense of normalcy for the sake of Sarah and James, but the rift in our marriage seemed insurmountable. One afternoon, while searching for a Band-Aid in the bathroom drawer, I stumbled upon the paternity test kit again. It lay there, innocuous yet ominous, the plastic wrapping still intact as if waiting to unveil the truth I feared to confront. My heart pounded in my chest as I picked up the box, fingers trembling. Memories of the first time I had seen it flooded my mind. The shock, the uncertainty, the questions left unanswered. I held it in my hands, the weight of its implications crushing me like a vice. Emily's footsteps approached from behind, and I quickly shoved the box back into the drawer, my breath caught in my throat. She paused in the doorway, her gaze lingering on me with a mixture of concern and apprehension. "Are you okay?" she asked softly, her voice hesitant. I nodded, unable to meet her eyes. "Yeah," I replied hoarsely, "just looking for something." Emily's brow furrowed slightly, her intuition sensing the turmoil brewing beneath the surface. "Is everything all right between us?" she ventured cautiously. I hesitated, the words catching in my throat. "I found the test kit again," I finally admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "Why, Emily, why do you have it?" Her expression faltered, a fleeting shadow crossing her features before she composed herself. I don't know," she replied quietly, her eyes avoiding mine. "I was scared, confused. I thought I needed to know." Her admission struck me like a blow to the chest. "Know what, Emily?" I demanded, my voice rising with frustration and hurt. "Whether James is mine?" Tears welled up in her eyes, her silence confirming my worst fears. "I didn't know who else to turn to," she whispered brokenly. "I was so lost, and I didn't want to hurt you more than I already have." Anger surged within me, battling with the overwhelming sadness threatening to consume me whole. "You didn't think about how this would hurt me?" I choked out, my voice trembling with emotion. "How could you do this, Emily?" Her shoulders sagged, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I'm sorry," she pleaded, her voice raw with regret. "I never meant for any of this to happen." The room felt suffocating, the air heavy with unspoken accusations and shattered trust. I wanted to scream, to lash out at her betrayal, but beneath the anger lay a deep ache. The ache of a love betrayed, a family torn apart. "I need to know the truth," I said finally, my voice a whisper of resignation. "I need to know if James is my son." Emily nodded silently, her gaze fixed on the ground. The silence stretched between us, laden with the weight of the decisions that had brought us to this moment. As I closed the drawer with trembling hands, the paternity test kit loomed large in my mind, a stark reminder of the fragile threads that held our marriage together and the painful truths that awaited us both. The days following the discovery of the paternity test kit were filled with a suffocating mix of uncertainty and anguish. Every moment with Emily felt like a facade, our interactions strained under the weight of unspoken questions and unmet expectations. I struggled to find solid ground amidst the turmoil, searching for a lifeline to grasp onto in the storm. One evening, unable to bear the weight of my thoughts alone any longer, I reached out to my best friend Mark. We had been friends since childhood, our bond forged through years of shared experiences and unwavering support. I trusted him implicitly, knowing that he would offer guidance with honesty and compassion. Mark arrived at our doorstep that evening, concern etched into the lines of his face as he greeted me with a firm embrace. We settled into the living room, the air heavy with the unspoken tension that had taken residence within our home. "Talk to me, buddy," Mark said gently, his voice a soothing balm amidst the turmoil swirling within me. "What's been going on?" I took a deep breath, the weight of my confession pressing down on my shoulders. "I found a paternity test kit in our bathroom drawer," I began, my voice trembling with emotion. "Emily had it hidden away." Mark's brow furrowed in concern, his eyes searching mine for understanding. "Why would she have something like that?" he asked quietly, his tone laced with unease. "I don't know," I admitted, frustration and hurt seeping into my words. She claims it was out of fear and confusion, but I can't shake this feeling that there's more to it. Silence stretched between us as Mark absorbed my words, his expression a mirror of my own turmoil. "Have you talked to her about it?" he asked finally, his voice measured. I nodded slowly, recounting the tense conversation that had followed my discovery. "She admitted to feeling trapped in our marriage," I continued, my voice heavy with sorrow. "And she confessed. She confessed to seeing someone else." Mark's eyes widened in surprise, his hand reaching out to grasp mine in silent solidarity. "I'm so sorry, man," he murmured, his voice filled with empathy. "I can't imagine what you're going through." Tears threatened to spill over as I struggled to articulate the ache in my chest. The betrayal, the uncertainty, the shattered dreams of our future together. "I don't know what to do, Mark," I admitted quietly, my voice cracking with emotion. "I love her, but how do you come back from something like this?" Mark squeezed my hand gently, his expression one of unwavering support. "You take it one step at a time," he said firmly, his voice a beacon of reason in the storm. "You figure out what's best for you, for Sarah and James, and whatever you decide, I'll be here for you." His words offered a sliver of comfort amidst the turmoil raging within me. For the first time since discovering the test kit, I felt a glimmer of clarity, a resolve to confront the painful truths that awaited me, and the strength to face whatever lay ahead. Mark's visit brought a sense of clarity amidst the turmoil, but the questions continued to haunt me like persistent shadows. Emily's confession and the discovery of the paternity test kit had shattered the illusion of our perfect marriage, leaving me grappling with a mix of anger, heartache, and a desperate need for answers. In the days that followed, I found myself observing Emily more closely, my senses attuned to every subtle shift in her behavior. Her late nights at the office persisted, punctuated by hurried phone calls and guarded conversations that sent a shiver of unease down my spine. One evening, after putting the kids to bed, I decided to search for any clues that might shed light on the truth. Emily was absorbed in her laptop in the living room, her brow furrowed in concentration as she typed away. With careful steps, I slipped into our bedroom, my heart pounding in my chest. I glanced around the room, searching for anything out of the ordinary. My gaze fell on Emily's nightstand, where her phone lay innocently beside a stack of books. The temptation to unlock it tugged at me, but I hesitated, grappling with the invasion of privacy that it entailed. Instead, I turned my attention to her side of the closet. Amongst neatly folded clothes and scattered accessories, I found a small notebook tucked away in a corner. It was nondescript, its pages filled with Emily's meticulous handwriting, a record of appointments, reminders, and occasional personal notes. Curiosity getting the better of me, I flipped through the pages, scanning for any clues that might confirm my suspicions. Amidst mundane entries, a name caught my eye: David. It appeared multiple times, often accompanied by dates and brief descriptions that hinted at meetings or outings. My heart sank as realization dawned upon me, the pieces of the puzzle falling into place with chilling clarity. David was her coworker, the same man I had seen her conversing with on that fateful evening at her office. The unease that had gnawed at me now solidified into a painful truth that I could no longer ignore. I closed the notebook with trembling hands, my mind reeling with a mix of emotions. Betrayal burned hot within me, mingling with a deep sorrow that threatened to engulf me whole. The evidence before me painted a picture of deceit, a web of lies woven beneath the facade of our once happy marriage. Returning to the living room, I found Emily engrossed in her work, unaware of the storm brewing within me. I wanted to confront her, to demand answers and to unleash the torrent of emotions pent up inside. But the weight of uncertainty held me back, the fear of what her confession might unveil. That night, sleep eluded me once more as I lay beside Emily, her breathing steady in the darkness. The notebook lay heavy on my mind, its revelations echoing through the hollow spaces between us. The decision loomed before me, whether to confront Emily with the evidence I had uncovered, or to continue grappling with the painful truths that threatened to tear us apart. The days stretched into an agonizing blur after uncovering Emily's notebook. Each moment was filled with a tumultuous mix of anger, betrayal, and a profound sense of loss. The evidence of her meetings with David lingered in my mind like a bitter aftertaste, a painful reminder of the fractured trust that had once bound us together. Despite my turmoil, I couldn't bring myself to confront Emily directly about what I had found. The fear of her reaction, of the truths that might surface, kept me paralyzed in a state of indecision. Yet the gnawing uncertainty demanded resolution, a clarity that only a definitive answer could provide. One evening, as Emily tended to the kids' bedtime routine, I retreated to the solitude of our bedroom. The paternity test kit lay hidden away in the drawer where I had found it, its presence a stark reminder of the unanswered questions that plagued my mind. I hesitated for a long moment, my fingers hovering over the box. The decision weighed heavily upon me, the choice to uncover a truth that could irreversibly alter our lives. With a deep breath, I finally reached for the kit, its contents cold and clinical against my trembling hands. The instructions were straightforward, the process outlined in meticulous detail. I read through them methodically, my mind racing with the implications of what I was about to do. The test promised clarity, a resolution to the doubts that had festered within me since discovering Emily's betrayal. Emily's laughter echoed faintly from the hallway, a painful reminder of the life we had built together. Guilt mingled with determination as I prepared the test, each step a deliberate motion toward the truth I feared to confront. When everything was ready, I sat on the edge of our bed, the test kit resting in my lap like a heavy burden. The minutes stretched into an eternity as I waited for the opportune moment, a moment when I could collect a discrete sample, one that would unveil the truth hidden within our family's fragile foundation. Later that night, after Emily had fallen asleep beside me, I slipped quietly out of bed. In the silence of our darkened bedroom, I gathered the necessary sample, my hands steady despite the turmoil raging within me. The test kit lay open on the bathroom counter, its sterile components a stark contrast to the emotional storm brewing inside. As I sealed the sample and placed it carefully inside the provided envelope, a wave of conflicting emotions washed over me, fear, anger, and a desperate hope for a different outcome. The decision to test felt like a final reckoning, a pivotal moment that would define the course of our future together. Returning to bed, I lay awake beside Emily, the weight of my decision pressing heavily upon my chest. The paternity test lay silently in the bathroom, its contents a silent testament to the fractured trust and painful truths that threatened to unravel the fabric of our once-unbreakable bond. Sleep eluded me that night as I wrestled with the repercussions of what I had done. The decision to test had been made out of necessity, a desperate grasp for clarity amidst the chaos of betrayal. Now, all that remained was to await the results, to confront the truth that awaited, and to brace myself for the storm that would inevitably follow. The days that followed the decision to send off the paternity test felt interminable, each passing hour marked by a relentless anticipation that weighed heavily on my shoulders. Emily's presence in our home felt both a comfort and a reminder of the fragile state of our marriage, a state teetering on the edge of irreparable damage. I tried to maintain a semblance of normalcy for Sarah and James, masking the turmoil raging within me beneath a veneer of routine and stability. Emily, too, seemed to sense the tension that lingered between us. Her attempts at conversation and intimacy met with guarded responses and forced smiles. Nights were the hardest, a relentless cycle of sleeplessness and restless thoughts that refused to quiet. In the darkness, I replayed the events that had led us to this precipice, grappling with the painful truths that threatened to unravel our family's foundation. Emily, too, seemed lost in her own thoughts, her demeanor a mix of apprehension and guilt. She tried to bridge the growing divide between us with gestures of affection and reassurance, yet each touch and word felt like a fragile thread stretched taut over a widening chasm. One evening, as I sat alone in our living room, the weight of uncertainty pressing down upon me, the phone rang. I hesitated for a moment before answering, my heart leaping into my throat at the prospect of the results I had been dreading and yearning for simultaneously. "Hello?" I greeted cautiously, my voice betraying the tremor of anxiety that gripped me. "Mr. Thompson?" A voice on the other end inquired politely. "This is Dr. Reynolds from the testing facility. I'm calling with the results of your paternity test." My pulse quickened, adrenaline coursing through my veins as I braced myself for the inevitable revelation. "Yes, go ahead," I managed to reply, my voice steadier than I felt. "I'm sorry, Mr. Thompson," Dr. Reynolds began solemnly, his words hanging heavy in the air. "Based on the DNA analysis, James is not your biological son." The world seemed to tilt on its axis, as the weight of his words crashed over me like a tidal wave. Shock, disbelief, and a raw anguish flooded my senses, threatening to drown me in a sea of heartache and shattered dreams. I, I see, I stammered, struggling to process the devastating truth. Thank you for letting me know. The line went silent, the words hanging between us like an unbridgeable divide. Slowly, I set the phone down, my hands trembling uncontrollably. Emily's footsteps approached from behind, her voice a distant echo in the haze of my thoughts. "Who was that?" she asked softly, her expression one of apprehension and concern. I turned to face her, the pain of betrayal and loss etched into every line of my being. "It was the testing facility," I replied hoarsely, the words heavy with the weight of a truth that threatened to shatter us both. "The results are in, Emily." Her eyes widened in shock, her breath catching in her throat. What did they say?" she whispered, her voice trembling. I took a deep breath, the silence stretching between us like an unspoken accusation. "James," I began, my voice breaking with the weight of the truth. "James is not my biological son." Tears welled up in Emily's eyes, her hands flying to her mouth in disbelief. "No," she gasped, her voice barely a whisper. "No, that can't be." But the evidence lay before us, a stark confirmation of the shattered trust and painful realities that had driven us to this precipice. The road ahead loomed uncertain and fraught with heartache as we grappled with the devastating aftermath of a truth that threatened to tear apart everything we had once held dear. Emily stood before me, her eyes wide with shock and her hands trembling. The weight of my words hung heavily between us, a palpable silence that spoke volumes of the devastation wrought by the truth. "No," she repeated, her voice barely above a whisper, as if trying to deny the undeniable. "James, he's our son." I shook my head slowly, the ache in my chest threatening to suffocate me. "The test doesn't lie, Emily," I replied hoarsely, my voice strained with emotion. "He's not my biological son." Tears streamed down Emily's cheeks, her composure crumbling like a fragile facade. I didn't know," she whispered brokenly, her words choked with regret. "I never meant for any of this to happen." The confession hung in the air between us, heavy with the weight of betrayal and unanswered questions. Anger surged within me, battling with a profound sense of loss and the gnawing ache of a love betrayed. "How long?" I demanded, my voice raw with emotion. "How long have you known?" Emily shook her head helplessly, her gaze fixed on the ground. It started a few months ago," she admitted quietly. I was lonely, and David, he was there." The mention of his name ignited a spark of fury within me, a name that had become synonymous with the unraveling of our marriage. "David," I echoed bitterly, my jaw clenched with barely contained rage. "And you didn't think to tell me?" "I was scared," Emily pleaded, her voice tinged with desperation. "I didn't know how you would react, how it would affect us. I thought I could fix things, but—" Her words trailed off into a painful silence, the truth of her betrayal hanging heavily between us. The foundation of trust upon which our marriage had been built lay shattered, the cracks irreparable. "You betrayed me," I whispered, the words a harsh indictment that echoed through the hollow spaces of our once happy home. "You betrayed us." Emily collapsed onto the couch, her shoulders shaking with sobs. "I'm so sorry," she sobbed, her voice muffled against her hands. "I never wanted to hurt you, to lose you." The rawness of her pain mirrored my own, a shared anguish that threatened to consume us both. "Why, Emily?" I asked softly, my voice filled with a longing for answers that could never mend the shattered pieces of our broken trust. She looked up at me through tear-filled eyes, her gaze pleading for understanding. "I don't know," she whispered brokenly. "I was lost, and I made a terrible mistake." The weight of her confession settled over us like a suffocating blanket, the silence punctuated only by the sound of her ragged breaths. The road ahead stretched uncertain and fraught with heartache, as we faced the devastating aftermath of a truth that had torn apart everything we had once held dear. The aftermath of the revelation that James was not my biological son left our home in a state of emotional turmoil. Emily's tearful confession and the bitter truth of her betrayal hung heavy in the air, casting a pall over every interaction between us. Days passed in a haze of numbness and disbelief, punctuated by moments of raw pain and anger that threatened to consume us both. Amidst the chaos of our shattered marriage, the awaited results of the paternity test arrived in the mail. I found the envelope sitting innocuously on our kitchen counter one afternoon, its presence a stark reminder of the irreversible truth we could no longer avoid. With trembling hands, I tore open the envelope and unfolded the letter within. The words blurred before my eyes as I struggled to make sense of the clinical language that confirmed what I already knew in my heart. The paternity test results were conclusive. James was indeed not my biological son. I sank into a chair, the weight of the truth crashing over me once more. Emily hovered nearby, her eyes filled with a mix of apprehension and sorrow. "What does it say?" she asked softly, her voice barely audible. I handed her the letter without a word, unable to meet her gaze. Emily read the contents in silence, her hands shaking slightly. Tears welled up in her eyes as she folded the letter back into its envelope, her shoulders slumping with the weight of our shared pain. "I'm so sorry," she whispered brokenly, her voice thick with emotion. "I never meant for any of this to happen." I looked up at her, the bitterness of betrayal warring within me with the remnants of love that still lingered. "Neither did I replied quietly, my voice tinged with sadness. The room fell into a heavy silence, broken only by the muffled sounds of our children playing in the next room. Sarah and James, innocent bystanders in the wreckage of our marriage, their lives forever altered by the consequences of our choices. "We have to tell them," I said finally, breaking the silence that threatened to suffocate us. "They deserve to know the truth." Emily nodded silently, her gaze fixed on the floor. "I know," she murmured, her voice barely audible. "But how? How do we explain this to them?" I sighed heavily, grappling with the weight of the conversation that awaited us. "We'll figure it out," I said firmly, though uncertainty gnawed at the edges of my resolve. "Together." Emily looked up at me, her eyes filled with gratitude and remorse. "I love you," she whispered, her voice cracking with emotion. The words hung in the air between us, a fragile thread of hope amidst the wreckage of our shattered marriage. Despite the pain and betrayal, a part of me still yearned to believe in the possibility of healing, of finding a way forward through the storm that had torn us apart. But first, we had to face the truth with our children, to navigate the difficult conversations and painful realities that awaited us on the other side. As I held Emily's gaze, I knew that the road ahead would be fraught with heartache and uncertainty, but together, we would confront the consequences of our choices and strive to rebuild what had been broken. Telling Sarah and James the truth about James's paternity was one of the most agonizing decisions Emily and I had ever faced. We knew it would forever alter their perception of our family and possibly their own identities. Yet, the weight of honesty and integrity compelled us to confront the reality head-on. One Saturday afternoon, we sat them down in the living room, the atmosphere heavy with unspoken tension. Sarah, at 10 years old, sensed something serious was about to unfold, her brows furrowed with concern. James, only 7, fidgeted nervously beside her, oblivious to the gravity of the moment. "Mom, Dad, what's wrong?" Sarah asked, her voice tinged with worry. Emily and I exchanged a glance, the weight of the conversation ahead settling like a leaden weight upon our shoulders. "We need to talk to you about something important," I began, my voice steady despite the turmoil within. Their eyes shifted between us, waiting for an explanation that would forever alter their understanding of our family dynamics. Emily took a deep breath, her hands clasped tightly in her lap as she struggled to find the right words. "James," she began gently, her voice trembling slightly, "there's something we need to tell you." She paused, searching for the courage to continue. "You know how sometimes families can be a little different?" James nodded uncertainly, his gaze flickering between us. "Yeah?" Emily swallowed hard, her resolve wavering for a moment before she pressed on. "Well, your dad and I recently found out something important," she explained carefully, her voice tinged with sadness. "And it's about who your biological father is." Sarah's eyes widened in confusion, while James looked from Emily to me, his brow furrowed in confusion. "What do you mean?" he asked innocently, his young mind struggling to grasp the weight of our words. Taking a deep breath, I spoke gently, yet firmly. James, the test we did showed that I'm not your biological father. Silence enveloped the room like a heavy blanket, broken only by the soft sound of Emily's stifled sobs. Sarah's eyes filled with tears, her hand reaching out to grasp James's in a gesture of silent support. James stared at us in disbelief, his small frame trembling with the weight of our revelation. I don't understand, he whispered, his voice barely audible amidst the turmoil of emotion swirling around us. Emily moved to kneel before him, her hands reaching out to cup his face gently. Sweetheart, she began, her voice thick with emotion. You are still our son. We love you with all our hearts, no matter what. Tears streamed down James's cheeks, his lower lip trembling with unspoken questions and unmet expectations. But why? He choked out, his voice filled with a mixture of hurt and confusion. Emily glanced at me, silently urging me to continue. Your mom and I started, my voice breaking with the weight of the truth. We made some mistakes, and one of those mistakes led us to find out this truth. Sarah sniffled beside James, her eyes never leaving us as she processed the revelation. Does this mean, are you leaving us? She asked in a small voice, her fear palpable in the air. Emily shook her head vehemently, her hands tightening around James's. No, sweetheart, she reassured them both, her voice steady with conviction. Your dad and I are still here for you. We're still a family no matter what. The room fell into a heavy silence once more, the truth hanging between us like an unspoken promise. Despite the pain and uncertainty that lay ahead, we had taken the first step toward healing, a step born out of honesty, love, and a shared commitment to navigate the turbulent waters that lay ahead. In the aftermath of revealing the truth to Sarah and James, our home felt like a fragile sanctuary teetering on the edge of collapse. The weight of our children's reactions, Sarah's tears and James's bewildered silence, hung heavy in the air, a stark reminder of the irreparable damage wrought by our choices. As Emily and I navigated the strained silence that followed, I found myself grappling with a tumultuous mix of emotions, anger, betrayal, and an overwhelming sense of loss. The truth of James's paternity had shattered the fragile semblance of normalcy that had sustained us, leaving behind a chasm of unanswered questions and unspoken regrets. One evening, after putting the children to bed, I found Emily sitting alone in the living room, her gaze fixed on the flickering flame of a candle. The heaviness in the room was palpable, the unspoken tension simmering just beneath the surface. I cleared my throat, breaking the silence that had settled between us like a suffocating blanket. Emily looked up, her eyes red-rimmed from tears shed in solitude. Guilt and remorse flickered in her gaze, mingling with a silent plea for understanding. We need to talk, I began quietly, my voice steady despite the turmoil raging within me. Emily nodded slowly, her shoulders slumping with resignation. I know, she replied softly, her voice barely above a whisper. I sank into the armchair opposite her, the distance between us a stark reminder of the emotional divide that had grown between us. Why, Emily? I asked finally, my voice tinged with a bitterness I struggled to contain. Why did you betray our family? Tears welled up in Emily's eyes once more, her hands twisting nervously in her lap. I don't have an excuse, she admitted brokenly, her voice thick with emotion. I was lost and I made a terrible mistake. Anger surged within me, battling with a deep-seated hurt that threatened to consume me whole. How long? I demanded harshly, my words laced with accusation. How long were you seeing him? Emily flinched at the harshness of my tone, her composure crumbling like a fragile facade. It started a few months ago, she confessed quietly, her gaze fixed on the floor. I was lonely, and David, he was there. David's name ignited a fresh wave of fury within me, a name that had become synonymous with the unraveling of our marriage. Did you ever love me? I asked bitterly, my voice cracking with the weight of betrayal. Emily looked up at me, her eyes filled with tears. Yes, she whispered, her voice raw with pain. I still do. The admission cut through me like a knife, mingling with the remnants of love that still lingered despite the wreckage of our shattered trust. How could you do this to us? I choked out, the anguish in my voice mirrored in the ache of my heart. I don't know, Emily replied helplessly, tears streaming down her cheeks. I never meant for any of this to happen. Silence descended upon us once more, heavy with the weight of unspoken regrets and shattered dreams. The road ahead stretched uncertain and fraught with heartache as we grappled with the devastating aftermath of a truth that threatened to tear apart everything we had once held dear. Yet, amidst the wreckage of our shattered marriage, a glimmer of hope flickered, a fragile beacon amidst the darkness. For better or for worse, we were bound together by the shared pain and the undying hope that somehow we would find a way to heal the wounds that had torn us apart. In the aftermath of confronting Emily about her betrayal, our lives were enveloped in a tense silence that spoke volumes of the rift between us. The revelation of James's true paternity had shattered the foundation of trust upon which our marriage had been built, leaving behind a landscape scarred with pain and uncertainty. Days turned into weeks as Emily and I grappled with the devastating consequences of her infidelity. We sought solace in counseling, attempting to navigate the turbulent waters of our fractured relationship with the guidance of a professional mediator. Yet, the wounds remained raw, and the path forward remained obscured by the shadow of our shared betrayal. Sarah and James, too young to fully grasp the complexities of our adult struggles, sought refuge in their innocence, a sanctuary untouched by the upheaval that had rocked their world. As parents, Emily and I strived to shield them from the full extent of our turmoil, masking our pain behind forced smiles and hollow reassurances. Amidst the chaos of our shattered marriage, a decision loomed before us, a decision that would irrevocably alter the course of our lives. Emily and I faced a crossroads, torn between the desire to salvage what remained of our love and the painful realization that some wounds may never fully heal. One evening, as we sat together in the quiet solitude of our home, Emily reached for my hand, her touch tentative yet filled with unspoken longing. "I'm sorry," she murmured, her voice thick with emotion, "for everything." I looked into her eyes, the ache in my heart mirrored in the depths of her gaze. "I don't know if I can forgive you," I admitted quietly, the words heavy with the weight of our shattered trust. Emily nodded solemnly, tears glistening in her eyes. "I understand," she replied softly, her voice tinged with regret. "I don't deserve your forgiveness." The admission hung between us like a fragile thread, a testament to the fragility of our once unbreakable bond. Despite the pain and betrayal that had driven us apart, a part of me still yearned for the possibility of reconciliation, for a future where forgiveness and healing might pave the way forward. Yet, as the days turned into months and the wounds slowly began to heal, Emily and I came to a mutual understanding, a decision born out of love, regret, and the shared commitment to our children's well-being. "We can't go back to how things were," I said finally, breaking the silence that had settled between us like an unspoken truth. "But maybe we can find a way to move forward." Emily nodded, her hand tightening around mine in a silent vow of solidarity. "I love you," she whispered, her voice filled with a quiet determination, "and I will spend the rest of my life proving that to you." The road ahead remained uncertain and fraught with challenges, but as we stood on the precipice of our shared journey, I knew that we had made a choice to confront our truths, to face the consequences of our actions, and to embrace the possibility of a future rebuilt on the foundation of forgiveness, resilience, and unwavering love. And as we held each other close, our children's laughter echoing in the background, I dared to believe that perhaps, against all odds, our family might find a way to heal the wounds of the past and forge a new path forward, together.